Good morning. Welcome back to Coffee with the Callers. Father James along with
Father Doug.
And we are here coming up right on the edge of Christmas, last week of Advent, and we're preparing for the solemn feast of the birth of our Lord. So one of the questions that oftentimes comes up, and you might see it on the Discovery Channel or one of those cable channels that has documentaries about religion, is, did Christmas actually happen on the 25th of December?
Yeah.
I mean, how do we know that? So, Padre, when people come up and ask you, hey, Father, are you a Catholic priest? Did Christmas really happen on the 25th?
Yeah.
How do you respond?
Well, I think from a the first thing to say is that we celebrate Christmas on December 25th, and we know definitively that the birth of Christ happened. And so whether or not it happened on that exact date, it's important for us as a church to fix a time every year to bring it up into our minds and to enter into the event, which is a real event in history, even if we're not able to say for absolute certain when the actual date was. But that being said, I think there's a certain argument in favor of December 25th. If you go back into the fathers of the church, way back into the very early centuries, you can see them attributing the birth of Christ to this date. And I think it's not unreasonable to think that that the Blessed Virgin Mary would have remembered the date of Christmas, and that the apostles would have been interested in knowing what it was, and that the community would have been interested in commemorating it. So I think it's not unreasonable to think that there's something to that tradition.
Well, sure. I mean, at the very least, there's a 1 in 365 chance that he was actually born on the 25th of December. But one thing that I've always thought about when people ask me that question is one of the things about our Christian responsibility is to go out and make the world holy. To take all of the things that God has created and use them for God's purposes and see how God is manifest in them. So a lot of things we take from different cultures in Christianity. Like, for example, the Christmas tree. The Christmas tree was a pagan symbol that was used before Christ. And so because our charge is to go out and make all things holy, then we take what God has made, a pine tree, and even though it was used for a different religious purpose, it's still God's creation, and we see that as something that is holy. So we take even things that are secular and make them holy. So for Christmas, there's this notion that when Christ comes, he is the light of the world. The dawn from on high breaks upon us. This idea that Christ enlightens our lives. And so what was the darkest time of the year? Winter. And so as we and the church began to develop the birth of Christ, the day the birth of Christ happened, there's this sense of taking the natural order of things and making them holy, seeing how God is present in them, so that when in the darkest time of the year, we're hunkered down, in bursts the light of Christ at his birth.
Yeah, in fact, Christmas is associated with the winter solstice and the time of the year when the night quits getting longer, and that stops, and then from that day on, going on into the spring, the days start getting longer. And so there could be a symbolic reason that Christ is the new light coming into the world. And maybe it's that the early Christians didn't know the date of the birth of Christ, but they chose that as a fitting time to commemorate it every year. Or maybe, I think not unreasonably, they had a tradition that they held on to about when the birth of Christ happened.
Yeah, that's a great point. So as we prepare now for the coming of Christ, this coming Tuesday, the 25th of December, let's think about that in our prayers, that the light shines upon us in the darkness. Have a great Christmas, and we look forward to seeing you.